she whispered. I could never love a black man, never imagining those cruel words would be captured on a dash cam, or that minutes later, a black man would carry her broken body from a fiery wreck. Charlotte Hale had it all: beauty, power, a corner office with a view, but one sentence revealed the ugliness beneath her polished facade, threatening to destroy her reputation and the unexpected feelings blooming between her and the mechanic who saved her life. When Marcus hears the recording, his world shatters. Was he just her redemption project? Or was the connection between them real enough to survive her devastating betrayal? As secrets surface and ultimatums are delivered, both must decide if forgiveness is possible when trust has been obliterated by the very words someone can never take back. Subscribe now and comment "Forgive" if you believe love can overcome our worst moments, or walk away if some betrayals cut too deep to heal. Rain tapped against the car windows as Charlotte Hale leaned back in the leather seat. The dinner with clients had been long, and she was tired. Her assistant Lydia sat beside her, typing on her phone. Thanks for coming tonight, Charlotte said, watching the city lights blur through the raindrops. That dinner felt like it would never end. Lydia looked up and smiled. You handled them well. I think we'll get that contract. Charlotte nodded, her mind drifting to another frustration. How was I supposed to know my blind date last week worked for our biggest competitor? My mother needs to stop trying to find me a husband. Donna means well, Lydia said carefully. Charlotte sighed. I know, but between work and her setups, I'm exhausted. She shook her head. The dating pool in this city is a puddle, and it's filled with sharks. The windshield wipers thumped steadily as their driver navigated through the increasing downpour. What about that guy from marketing? He seemed interested, Lydia suggested. Charlotte waved her hand dismissively. Too eager, too safe. She looked out at the rain and laughed, but there was little humor in it. I could never love a black man. It would be too complicated. Can you imagine my mother's face at the Christmas party? Lydia's smile faded. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, turning to look out her own window. The silence grew heavy in the back seat. Charlotte felt a twinge of shame at her own words, but pushed it away. She was just tired and venting, she told herself. It didn't mean anything. Suddenly, headlights flared bright through the windshield. Their driver cursed. Watch out! Lydia screamed. There was a sickening crunch of metal. The world spun in a blur of lights and rain. Charlotte felt herself thrown forward, then back. The airbag exploded in her face. Glass shattered. Then everything stopped with a final, jarring impact. Charlotte couldn't breathe. Her chest hurt. Something warm trickled down her forehead. Through cracked glass, she saw flashing hazard lights and falling rain. Charlotte! Charlotte! Lydia's voice sounded far away. Charlotte tried to move, but her door was jammed. Smoke began to curl from under the hood. Panic rose in her throat. Help! She whispered. Then louder. Help! Through the broken window, a face appeared. A man with concerned brown eyes and rain dripping from his short black hair. Don't move, he said firmly. I'm going to get you out. He disappeared, then returned with a metal tool. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air as he worked on the door. Finally, it groaned open. Can you move? He asked, crouching beside her. Charlotte tried to nod, but pain shot through her neck. I think so. I need to get you away from the vehicle. There's smoke. His voice was calm, but urgent. Before she could respond, strong arms slipped under her legs and behind her back. He lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest as he carried her away from the wreck. You're okay, he murmured, his breath warm against her hair. "Stay with me." As he set her gently on the ground, away from the car, Charlotte looked up into his face. Raindrops clung to his eyelashes. His expression was focused, concerned. Then the world went dark. Charlotte woke to the steady beep of hospital monitors. Sunlight streamed through the blinds. Her neck was stiff in a brace, and her body ached. "Hey," Lydia said from a chair beside the bed. "Welcome back." Charlotte tried to sit up, wincing. "What happened? The driver? You?" "Everyone's okay. Driver has a concussion. I just have some bruises." Lydia leaned forward. "The car spun into a barrier. You got the worst of it because your side hit first." Memories filtered back. The crash, the smoke, the man who pulled her out. "There was someone, a man, who helped me." Lydia nodded. "He stopped his tow truck when he saw the crash. Pulled you out before the engine caught fire. EMTs said he might have saved your life." "Who was he?" "Marcus Reed, owns Reed Auto and Tow. He gave a statement to the police and then left. Refused medical attention." Charlotte touched the bandage on her forehead. "I need to thank him." Her phone buzzed. Charlotte picked it up to see her mother's name on the screen. "Charlotte, are you all right? Why didn't you call me?" Donna Hale's voice was sharp with worry. "I'm fine, Mom. Minor injuries. The doctor says I can go home today." "Thank goodness. I've already spoken with PR. We'll release a brief statement saying you suffered a minor accident and are recovering well. No need to worry the shareholders." Charlotte closed her eyes. "That's what you're concerned about? The shareholders?" "Of course I'm worried about you," Donna said. "But we have responsibilities. The board meeting is next week. You need to be there." "I will be." After ending the call, Charlotte turned to Lydia. "Find him for me." "The tow truck guy?" Lydia asked. "Yes, I want to thank him properly." Late morning sunlight gleamed off the polished concrete floor of Reed Auto and Tow. The garage was surprisingly clean for an auto shop, with tools arranged neatly on pegboards and classic rock playing softly from an old radio in the corner. A golden retriever dozed in a bed near the office door, lifting her head when the bell over the entrance jingled. Charlotte felt out of place in her pressed slacks and silk blouse. The rental car she and Lydia had arrived in, a sleek silver luxury sedan, looked absurdly clean and expensive, parked beside the garage's cinder-block building. A man slid out from under a lifted truck, wiping his hands on a rag. Charlotte recognized him immediately, the same man who had pulled her from the wreck. He was taller than she remembered, broad-shouldered but lean. His dark skin was smooth, and his expression guarded when he saw her. "Ms. Hale," he said, nodding. "Surprised to see you up and about so soon." "You know who I am?" He half smiled. "Your assistant gave me your card for the police report. Plus, your face is on those home goods magazines at the supermarket checkout." Charlotte felt her cheeks warm. Of course, her PR team had arranged several features recently. "Mr. Reed, I wanted to thank you personally for what you did." She reached into her purse. "I'd like to give you something for saving my life." He shook his head. "No need for that. I did what anyone should do." "Please," Charlotte insisted, extending a check. "It's the least I can do." Marcus looked at the check but didn't take it. "I appreciate the thought, but I wasn't looking for a reward." His voice was firm but not unkind. The dog had wandered over and now nudged Charlotte's hand with her nose. "That's Maggie," Marcus said. "She thinks everyone comes here to see her." Charlotte bent to pet the dog, grateful for the distraction. Her neck twinged with pain. "Still hurting?" Marcus asked, noticing her wince. "A little. The doctor says it'll be sore for a few weeks." Marcus nodded. "Lucky it wasn't worse." An awkward silence fell between them. Charlotte looked around the garage, noting the orderliness, the careful organization. This wasn't just a job for him. This was his pride. "Would you mind giving me a tour?" she asked suddenly. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Of my garage?" "Yes, I'm curious about your business." He shrugged and waved a hand. "Sure, not much to see, but come on in." As he showed her around, Charlotte was struck by the care he took in explaining his work. He spoke about engines and diagnostics with quiet confidence. This was a man who knew his worth without needing to boast about it. In his small office, a whiteboard displayed a neatly written schedule of service appointments. A coffee mug emblazoned with "World's Best Dad" sat on the desk. "Your child?" Charlotte asked, gesturing to the mug. Marcus laughed. "No, that's from my dad. It's a joke between us. He owned this place before me." Charlotte nodded, an idea forming. "Mr. Reed?" "Marcus," he corrected. "Marcus. My company has a fleet of vehicles for sales visits. We've been looking for a reliable service provider." This wasn't entirely true, but as she said it, she realized it made sense. "Would you be interested in a contract? Fair rates, net 15 payments?" Marcus studied her face. "Is this because I pulled you out of that car? Because, like I said, you don't owe me anything." "No," Charlotte said firmly. "It's because I've seen your operation. You're meticulous. That's what I want for my company's vehicles." He considered this. 1-month trial. If it works out, we can discuss a longer arrangement." "Deal." Charlotte extended her hand, and this time Marcus took it. His palm was warm and calloused against her softer skin. As they walked back to the car, Lydia gave Charlotte a curious look. "I'll email you the contract details," Charlotte told Marcus. "Thank you again. For everything." He nodded, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "Drive safe, Miss Hale." "Charlotte," she corrected, surprising herself. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Charlotte, take care of that neck." Back at her sleek high-rise office, Charlotte couldn't focus on her emails. Her mind kept returning to Marcus Reed, his calm presence, his refusal of her money, the pride he took in his work. There was a knock, and Lydia entered with a small device in her hand. "The driver's personal dash cam," she explained. "Insurance needs it for the claim. I was reviewing the footage and there's something you should hear." Charlotte frowned. "What is it?" Lydia's expression was troubled. "It's from right before the crash." She placed the device on Charlotte's desk, but didn't play it. "It recorded our conversation in the back seat." Understanding dawned slowly. Charlotte felt ice form in her stomach. "You mean—" "Yes, what you said about never being able to love a black man." Charlotte closed her eyes. The words she'd spoken so carelessly now came back to haunt her. Words spoken minutes before a black man had carried her broken body from a wreck. "Send me the file?" she said quietly. When Lydia left, Charlotte stared out at the city sprawled below her window. Buildings gleamed in the afternoon sun. Tiny cars moved in orderly lines, and people went about their lives, unaware of the shame spreading through her chest. She opened her email and began typing a confession to Marcus, explaining what she'd said, apologizing for her thoughtless words. But as her fingers hovered over the keyboard, doubt crept in. Would words be enough? Or would they just be a way to ease her own guilt? She deleted the draft. Instead, she would show him through actions that she wasn't the person who had spoken those ugly words. She would be better than her worst moment. Charlotte picked up her phone and texted Marcus. "Thank you again. Coffee while you're at HQ tomorrow?" His reply came a few minutes later. "Sure." She set down her phone, a strange mix of hope and anxiety settling in her chest. Tomorrow would be a start. A small one, but a start nonetheless. Early morning light streaked across the company parking garage as Charlotte balanced 2 coffee cups in her hands. She spotted Marcus kneeling beside one of the company cars, his toolbox open on the concrete beside him. "Morning," she called, approaching carefully in her heels. Marcus looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Morning." He stood and wiped his hands on a rag tucked into his back pocket. Charlotte held out one of the cups. "I wasn't sure how you take it, so I brought cream and sugar packets." "Black is fine, actually." He accepted the cup with a nod. "Thanks." They stood awkwardly for a moment before Charlotte gestured to the car. "What's wrong with it?" "Just a routine oil change. Your fleet manager scheduled maintenance for all the vehicles." Charlotte nodded, watching as he took a sip of the coffee. The confession sat heavy in her chest, but she pushed it down. Not yet. She needed to show him who she really was first. "Do you mind if I watch?" she asked. "I've never actually seen an oil change done." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "CEO doesn't need to know how to change oil." "Maybe not, but I'm curious." She smiled. "Unless I'm in your way?" He shrugged. "Not in my way." For the next 15 minutes, Charlotte stood nearby as Marcus worked, explaining each step in simple terms. She asked questions, genuinely interested in the process. There was something soothing about his methodical movements, the confidence in his hands as they worked. "So, that's it?" she asked when he closed the hood. "That's it. Not rocket science." He took another sip of his coffee. "How's the neck?" Charlotte touched her neck, which was still sore but no longer needed a brace. "Better, thanks." A silver sports car pulled into the garage, parking crookedly across 2 spaces. Marcus winced. "That hurts my soul," he said, nodding toward the car. Charlotte laughed. "That would be Nate from marketing. Parking isn't his strong suit." "What is his strong suit?" "Looking important, mostly." She smiled and was rewarded with a small chuckle from Marcus. "I should finish up here," he said, turning back to his tools. Charlotte nodded, suddenly reluctant to leave. "Thanks for the tutorial, and for the work on our fleet." "Just doing my job." He glanced at her. "See you around, Charlotte." As she walked toward the elevator, her phone still tucked safely in her pocket, the confession email remained unsent. Later that week, Charlotte found herself driving to Reed Auto and Tow after work. She told herself it was just to return the tire inflator Marcus had loaned her when one of her tires had looked low. But the truth was, she wanted to see him again. The garage was quiet, with most of the staff gone for the day. Marcus was wiping down tools when she walked in, Maggie thumping her tail in greeting. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," Charlotte said, holding up the tire inflator. "I wanted to return this." "Could have brought it tomorrow," Marcus said, but he didn't seem annoyed. "I'm servicing 2 more of your fleet cars in the morning." "I was driving by," she lied, then immediately felt foolish. She doubted he believed that her regular route home took her through this neighborhood. Marcus set down his rag and took the inflator. "Thanks." He hesitated. "You want some coffee? Just made a fresh pot before everyone left." Charlotte smiled. "I'd like that." In his small office, they sat across from each other with steaming mugs. The conversation started with work, how the fleet contract was going, upcoming maintenance schedules, but gradually shifted to more personal topics. "So, you took over from your father?" Charlotte asked. Marcus nodded. 5 years ago. He started this place 30 years ago with 1 tow truck and a dream. Pride filled his voice. "He still comes by almost every day, can't quite let go." "That's sweet," Charlotte said. "My mother's the same with our company. She started it from her kitchen table, selling handmade home goods. Now we're in every major department store in the country. And you're the boss at what, 30? 32, she corrected. Mom's still chair of the board, though. Keeps me in line. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. They lapsed into comfortable silence. Charlotte noticed a photo on his desk of a younger Marcus, with his arm around a pretty woman. Your girlfriend? She asked, then immediately regretted her nosiness. Marcus's face grew serious. Ex. From a few years back. He picked up the photo and studied it for a moment. Things were good until I met her parents. He set the frame face down. They had concerns about me. What kind of concerns? Charlotte asked softly, though she already knew. Marcus met her eyes. The kind based on what I look like, not who I am. His voice wasn't angry, just matter of fact. Her dad said he had nothing against black folks, but didn't want his daughter bringing any home. Shame burned in Charlotte's chest. Her own words from the car echoed in her mind. I could never love a black man. I'm sorry, she said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. Marcus shrugged. It happens. Taught me to be careful who I give my heart to. He looked at her thoughtfully. You're not like that, are you? The question hung in the air between them. This was her moment to confess, to tell him about the words she'd spoken moments before he'd saved her. But fear held her tongue. I want to be better than my worst moment, she said finally. It wasn't a direct answer, but it was honest in its way. Marcus nodded slowly, as if hearing more in her words than she'd actually said. 2 days later, Charlotte's company held its annual spring cookout in the courtyard outside headquarters. Employees milled about in casual clothes, eating hamburgers and hot dogs, playing lawn games, and enjoying the beautiful weather. Charlotte spotted Marcus as soon as he arrived with 2 of his mechanics. She'd invited him personally, telling him it was a good chance to network with other department heads who might need his services. She walked over to greet them, conscious of how different Marcus looked today in jeans and a navy button-down shirt instead of his usual work clothes. He looked good, really good. Glad you could make it, she said, smiling warmly. There's plenty of food over there, and drinks are by the building. Thanks for inviting us, Marcus said. Place looks nice. As they chatted, Charlotte noticed several board members arriving, including her mother. Donna Hale was impeccably dressed even for a casual cookout, her silver hair perfectly styled, her calculating gaze sweeping the crowd. Charlotte, darling, Donna called, waving her over. Charlotte felt a flicker of panic. She wasn't ready for this introduction, not with her mother, not with the board watching. I should go say hello, she told Marcus. Feel free to mingle. He nodded and started to reach for her hand, but Charlotte stepped back subtly, breaking the contact before it began. Something hardened in his eyes, a wall going up. Marcus, this is... She hesitated. This is our new fleet contractor, she finished, not quite meeting his eyes. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained polite. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Hale. Likewise, Donna said with a practiced smile, already looking past him. Charlotte, come meet the Wilsons. They're considering a major investment. As Charlotte was led away, she glanced back to see Marcus watching her, his expression unreadable. He gave a small nod, then turned and walked toward the exit. Guilt gnawed at her all afternoon. By the time she could break free from her mother's introductions, Marcus and his crew were long gone. That evening, Charlotte sat in her sleek downtown condo, staring at her phone. She'd drafted and deleted a dozen text messages to Marcus, none of them capturing the apology she wanted to give. She was about to try again when her car refused to start in the garage below. After several failed attempts, she called Reed Auto and Tow. To her surprise, Marcus himself arrived 30 minutes later. "Didn't expect the owner to come out for a jump start," she said as he hooked up jumper cables to her battery. "We're short-staffed tonight." His voice was professional, distant. "Try it now." The engine roared to life. Marcus disconnected the cables and closed the hood. "You should get a new battery soon," he said, wiping his hands. "This one's on its last legs." "Thank you." Charlotte fidgeted with her keys. "About today, at the cookout." "No need to explain." His tone was flat. "No, there is." She took a deep breath. "I was wrong to introduce you that way. I was scared of what my mother would think." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "Of what, exactly?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Charlotte couldn't bring herself to answer directly. "Have you eaten?" she asked instead. "There's a food truck lot a few blocks from here. They stay open late." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way. I'll follow in my truck." The food truck lot was busy even at this hour, strung with twinkling lights and filled with the aroma of various cuisines. They settled at a picnic table with tacos and cold drinks. Away from the pressures of work and family, Charlotte felt herself relax. The conversation flowed easily as they talked about favorite foods, movies, and childhood memories. "My dad took me fishing every summer," Marcus said, smiling at the memory. "I was terrible at it, but he never seemed to mind." "That sounds nice," Charlotte said. "My childhood vacations were more like business trips. Mom was always networking, even at Disney World." As the night grew later, the crowd thinned, leaving them among the few remaining customers. In the reflection of a truck's polished surface, Charlotte caught a glimpse of them sitting together. They looked like any other couple enjoying a meal. No titles, no differences. Just two people connecting. "I'm sorry about today," she said finally. "I want you to know that's not who I want to be." Marcus studied her face. "We all have moments we're not proud of, Charlotte. The question is what we do after." She nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Tomorrow at work, she would apologize properly. No more hiding. The next afternoon, Charlotte was headed to Marcus's temporary workstation in the HQ parking garage when Lydia intercepted her. "Nate Collins is waiting in the boardroom," Lydia said, her expression concerned. "He says he has an expansion financing proposal that can't wait." Charlotte sighed. Nate Collins had been both a business associate and a brief romantic interest last year. The romance had fizzled quickly, but he remained connected to several key investors. "Tell him I'll be there in 10 minutes, Charlotte said, changing direction reluctantly. In the boardroom, Nate stood looking out at the city view. He turned when she entered, flashing the smooth smile that had once charmed her but now seemed calculated. "Charlotte," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "You look wonderful, as always." "Thanks, Nate. Lydia said you have a proposal?" For the next 20 minutes, Nate outlined a financing plan that would expand Charlotte's company into 3 new markets. The plan was solid, but there was a catch. Nate would join the executive team as part of the deal. "It's a win-win," he said, sliding the proposal across the table. "The investors trust me, and I know your business inside and out." Charlotte kept her expression neutral. "It's an interesting offer. I'll need to review it with the board." Nate smiled, but his eyes remained sharp. "Take your time, though I have heard whispers that you might be distracted lately." Charlotte stiffened. "Meaning?" "Just office gossip." He waved a hand dismissively. "Something about a new vendor taking up a lot of your personal attention." As they walked out, Nate spotted the vendor schedule in Lydia's hand, his eyes catching on the Reed Auto and Tow listing. New mechanic? He asked casually. New fleet service provider? Charlotte corrected. They've been excellent. Nate nodded, but something in his expression made Charlotte uneasy. I'll be in touch about the proposal, she said firmly, making it clear the conversation was over. After Nate left, Charlotte felt a headache forming. She had a board meeting to prepare for and had completely missed her chance to talk to Marcus. 2 nights later, Lydia stayed late cataloging files for the insurance claim from the accident. The IT floor was quiet, most employees having gone home hours ago. Working late? Nate's voice startled her. Mr. Collins, yes, just finishing up some accident paperwork. Lydia closed the file quickly. Nasty business, that crash. Nate perched on the edge of her desk. Charlotte's lucky she wasn't hurt worse. Lydia nodded, uncomfortable with his presence. Did you need something? Just checking on the team. His smile was charming, practiced. You do such important work. Not everyone appreciates that. After chatting for a few more minutes, Nate excused himself. But instead of leaving, he found a junior IT tech working late. Hey, I'm helping legal with the accident review, he lied smoothly. They need a backup of that corrupted SD card from the dashcam. Any chance you could help me out? The young tech, eager to impress an executive, agreed readily. Later, sitting in his car, Nate scrolled through the files until he found it, audio from right before the crash. He pressed play and heard Charlotte's voice clearly. I could never love a black man. It would be too complicated. A slow smile spread across his face. This could be useful. 2 days later, Charlotte arrived at Marcus's garage after closing time. She'd been practicing her apology all day, rehearsing the words she needed to say. She carried a pizza box and a 6-pack of craft beer, a peace offering. Marcus was locking up when she pulled in. Got a minute? She called through her open window. He hesitated, then nodded. Come in. Inside, they sat at his small desk, the pizza open between them. Charlotte took a deep breath. I'm sorry about the cookout, she said. You deserved better than to be introduced as just the contractor. Marcus took a sip of his beer. Why did you do it? The directness of his question caught her off guard, but she owed him honesty. I was scared, she admitted. Not of you, but of what others would think. Of what my mother would say if she knew I was interested in you. Because I'm black, he said plainly. Charlotte nodded, shame burning in her cheeks. Yes, and I hate that part of myself. I want to be better than that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. My whole life, I've had to be careful how people see me. Be extra polite, extra calm, extra everything, because one wrong move and I'm just another stereotype. He met her eyes. Do you know what that's like? No, she said softly. I don't. Then start with me, he said. Don't hide what you feel. Don't treat me like I'm your secret or your shame. You're not, Charlotte whispered. You're not a secret. You're not a shame. The air between them changed, charged with something new. Marcus reached across the desk, his fingers brushing hers. I think about you, he said quietly, more than I should. I think about you too. He stood and moved around the desk until he was standing in front of her. Slowly, deliberately, he bent down, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she rose to meet him, their lips touching in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deepened with shared hunger. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, stunned by the intensity of their connection. That was... Charlotte couldn't find the words. Yeah, Marcus agreed, a genuine smile spreading across his face. It was. The following week felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. Charlotte dropped by the garage each morning with coffee. Marcus taught her how to change a tire in the company parking lot, both of them laughing at her clumsy first attempts. On Sunday, he invited her to church with his father, Ray. She was nervous at first, but Ray's quiet dignity and the warm welcome from the congregation put her at ease. At home, Donna noticed the change in her daughter. The easier laugh, the relaxed posture, the way she hummed while checking emails. "You seem different," Donna observed over their weekly dinner. "Is it the new expansion plans?" "Just happy, Mom," Charlotte replied, not yet ready to tell her about Marcus. One evening, they went to a small restaurant for dinner. A friend of Marcus's stopped by their table, and Marcus introduced Charlotte as "my girlfriend." The words sent a thrill through her. Walking back to the car after dinner, Charlotte nearly told him about the dashcam audio. The words were on the tip of her tongue, the confession she'd been avoiding for weeks. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you." Her phone rang, cutting her off. It was Lydia with an urgent question about tomorrow's presentation. "I'll tell you tomorrow," Charlotte promised herself as she answered the call, unaware that tomorrow would be too late. The next morning was like any other at Reed Auto & Tow. Marcus changed the oil in a customer's sedan, ordered parts for a transmission repair, and gave Maggie her morning treat. Nothing suggested this ordinary Tuesday would tear his world apart. During a break between appointments, he sat at his desk checking emails. Most were invoices or order confirmations. But one caught his eye. No subject line, sent from an address he didn't recognize. Marcus clicked it open. There was no message, just a link to an audio file. Probably spam, he thought, but curiosity got the better of him. He clicked. A woman's voice filled the small office. Charlotte's voice. "I could never love a black man. It would be too complicated." Then came sounds of surprise, a crash, metal crunching, the accident. Marcus sat frozen, the words echoing in his ears. He played it again, hoping he'd misheard, but the voice was unmistakably Charlotte's. His hands gripped the edge of the desk until his knuckles ached. The timeline fell into place in his mind. Charlotte had said those words in the car. Then, minutes later, he had pulled her from the wreck. And in all their time together since, she'd never mentioned it. The garage suddenly felt too small. He stood, needing air, but instead grabbed his keys. "Heading out, boss?" his mechanic called as Marcus strode through the garage. "Be back later," he managed, his voice tight. In his truck, Marcus gripped the steering wheel, trying to process what he'd heard. All their moments together, the coffees, the conversations, the kiss, now cast in a different light. Had he been a project for her? A way to prove something to herself? Without consciously deciding, he found himself driving toward Charlotte's office building. Charlotte was reviewing quarterly reports when Lydia knocked on her door. "Marcus Reed is here," Lydia said, her expression concerned. "He seems upset." Before Charlotte could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway behind Lydia, his face set in hard lines she'd never seen before. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Charlotte stood, alarmed by his expression. "We need to talk," he said, his voice controlled but tense. "Privately." Lydia glanced between them. "Should I—" "It's okay," Charlotte assured her. "Give us a few minutes." After Lydia left, closing the door behind her, an uncomfortable silence filled the office. Marcus stood with his hands in his pockets, looking at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Someone sent me something interesting today," he finally said, pulling out his phone. "I think you should hear it." Before Charlotte could speak, he pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. "I could never love a black man. It would be too complicated." The blood drained from her face. "Marcus, Is that you?" he asked, though they both knew the answer. Yes, she whispered. But I need to explain. Explain what? His voice was eerily calm. That you said those words minutes before I pulled you from that wreck? That you've been hiding this all this time? I was going to tell you, Charlotte said, her heart pounding. I wanted to, so many times. When? After how many dinners? After how many kisses? His control slipped, anger bleeding through. Were you ever going to tell me, or was I just your little project? Your way of proving you're not really prejudiced? No, it wasn't like that. Tears filled her eyes. I said something terrible, yes, something I'm ashamed of. But what I feel for you is real. Marcus shook his head, pain visible beneath his anger. How can I believe that? You've been lying since the day we met. Not about my feelings, Charlotte insisted. I was wrong, and I was a coward for not telling you. But what's between us isn't fake. What's between us, Marcus said slowly, is a sentence you never wanted me to hear. He turned toward the door, then paused. The contract with your company is canceled. I'll have the paperwork sent over. Marcus, please. Charlotte stepped toward him. Let's talk about this. He looked back at her, his eyes filled with hurt. You turned me into your penance project. His voice was quiet, but cut like a blade. And I let you. Then he was gone, leaving Charlotte standing alone in her pristine office, the echo of her own damning words hanging in the air. By afternoon, whispers had spread. Charlotte noticed the sidelong glances from staff, the sudden silence when she entered the break room. Somehow, people knew. Lydia was the only one who confronted her directly, closing Charlotte's office door for privacy. Is it true? She asked. That audio file, people are talking about it. Charlotte nodded miserably. Someone leaked it. Marcus heard it. Lydia sank into a chair. Charlotte, why didn't you tell him? All this time? I was afraid, Charlotte admitted. Afraid to lose him before we even had a chance. And then the longer I waited... You can't fix this with spin, Lydia said gently but firmly. This isn't a PR problem. It's a human one. I know. Charlotte looked out at the city skyline, buildings gleaming in the afternoon sun. I really care about him, Lydia. Then why introduce him as our contractor at the cookout? Why keep him separate from your real life? The question stung because they were fair. Charlotte had no good answer. When Lydia left, Charlotte's phone rang. It was her mother. Charlotte, what is going on? Donna demanded without preamble. I'm hearing rumors about you and some mechanic, and now there's talk of a recording? Charlotte closed her eyes. Mom, I can't do this right now. You most certainly can. The board meeting is tomorrow. We need to get ahead of this. Get ahead of what? Charlotte's patience snapped. My personal life? Your reputation, Donna corrected. The company's reputation. I've scheduled a meeting with PR in an hour. No, Charlotte said firmly. This isn't a company matter. It's mine. After hanging up, Charlotte sat in silence, turning her phone over and over in her hands. Finally, she pressed play on the audio file that had been sent to her office email as well. Her own voice, thoughtless, prejudiced, filled the quiet room. Charlotte didn't try to excuse it or explain it away. She just listened, really hearing herself for the first time. That evening, she sat alone in her condo kitchen, an untouched glass of wine before her. She replayed every interaction with Marcus in her mind, seeing clearly now how her actions must have looked to him. The pain in his eyes when she'd introduced him as just the contractor. The way she'd kept their relationship separate from the rest of her life. I wasn't misunderstood, she whispered to the empty room. I was wrong. At Reed Auto and Tow, business continued, but everyone could tell something was off with the boss. Marcus worked with focused intensity, speaking only when necessary, his usual easy manner replaced by a stoic silence. Late in the day, Ray Reed arrived, immediately sensing the change in his son. "What's going on?" he asked, following Marcus into the office. "Nothing," Marcus replied, shuffling papers on his desk. Ray raised an eyebrow. "I've known you your whole life, son. That's not your nothing face." Marcus hesitated, then hit play on the audio file still open on his computer. Ray listened without comment, his weathered face revealing nothing. When it finished, he nodded slowly. "Charlotte," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." Marcus's voice was tight. "She never told me." Ray sat in the chair across from his son's desk, the same chair where Charlotte had sat so many times. "What happened when you confronted her?" "She said she was ashamed, that she meant to tell me, that her feelings for me are real." Marcus shook his head. "How can I believe that?" "Do you want to?" Ray asked quietly. Marcus looked away. "Doesn't matter what I want. She lied to me, Dad, about something fundamental." "She did," Ray agreed. "No question there. The question is, what happens now?" Marcus stood and paced the small office. "Nothing happens. It's done." "Is it?" "How can it not be?" Marcus demanded. "She said she could never love someone like me. Then she let me fall for her without ever coming clean." Ray was quiet for a moment. "You remember Mrs. Peyton from church? The one who crosses the street when she sees young black men coming?" Marcus nodded, unsure where this was going. 2 years ago, she had that stroke. And who was the first to rush to her house and drive her to the hospital? "Dion Williams," Marcus said, one of the same young men Mrs. Peyton had avoided. "And now?" "Now she bakes him cookies," Marcus admitted. "Has him over to watch basketball games." Ray leaned forward. "People can change, son. Not everyone, and not without real work. But it happens." "This is different," Marcus insisted. "Is it?" Ray stood, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm not saying forgive her today. I'm saying don't let pain make you cruel. Be angry, take time, but don't close the door on your own heart just to punish hers." After Ray left, Marcus sat alone in the darkening garage, his father's words echoing in his mind alongside Charlotte's recorded voice. Two truths competing for space in his heart. The next morning, Charlotte woke early after a nearly sleepless night. Instead of her usual power suit, she dressed simply in jeans and a soft blouse. At her desk, she pulled out pen and paper, not her laptop, not a dictation to her assistant, but her own hand putting words to paper. "Dear Marcus, I'm not writing to defend myself. What I said was wrong, prejudiced, hurtful. There's no excuse for my words, and I won't try to make one. You carried me from that wreck, not knowing what I'd said. You were kind, professional, and good, while I was none of those things. I've been afraid to face that ugly part of myself, and in my cowardice, I hurt you deeper than I can fix. You don't owe me forgiveness or another chance, but you do deserve an honest apology, without excuses or expectations. What I feel for you is real, more real than anything I've felt before. But I understand if those words mean nothing now. Thank you for saving my life that night. I'm sorry I repaid that gift with lies." Charlotte. She read it over, fighting the urge to soften it, to explain away her actions. This wasn't about making herself feel better. It was about owning the harm she'd caused. Mid-morning, after giving her shortest board presentation ever and deflecting her mother's urgent whispers about handling the situation, Charlotte drove to Reed Auto and Tow. The closed sign was up. Marcus was out on a service call. Only Maggie greeted her with a tail wag when she peeked through the window. She slipped the letter into an envelope, wrote "For Marcus" on the front, and left it propped against his coffee mug on his desk, visible through the office window. Then she left, unsure if she'd ever be welcome there again. What she didn't see was Ray Reed pulling into the lot just as she drove away. He used his key to check the mail, noticed the envelope on his son's desk, and set it safely aside, recognizing Charlotte's handwriting on the front. Late that afternoon, Marcus returned from a long day of tow calls to find his father waiting in the garage. "Thought you had choir practice?" Marcus said, hanging his keys on the hook by the door. "Cancelled," Ray replied. "There's something on your desk you should read." Marcus spotted the envelope immediately, Charlotte's neat handwriting unmistakable. "I don't want to hear any more excuses." "Then don't read it," Ray said simply. "Throw it away. Move on." He headed for the door, then paused. "But ask yourself if that's really what you want." After Ray left, Marcus stared at the envelope for a long time. Finally, with a sigh, he sat down and tore it open. He read Charlotte's letter twice, taking in each carefully written word. There were no excuses, no attempts to soften what she'd done. Just an honest acknowledgement of the harm and a simple apology. He closed his eyes, emotion washing over him. Anger still, yes, but mixed with something else. The memory of her smile when he taught her to change a tire. The sound of her laugh over dinner. The way she'd fit so perfectly in his arms when they kissed. Marcus folded the letter and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. But for the first time since hearing that damning audio, he allowed himself to consider the possibility. Sunday afternoon found Charlotte sitting alone in her condo, staring at her phone. No calls from Marcus. No texts. She hadn't expected any, but the silence still hurt. Her mother had called 6 times, each message more urgent than the last. The board was concerned. PR wanted to issue a statement. Nate Collins had called a special investor meeting. Charlotte ignored them all. None of it mattered if she couldn't face herself in the mirror. On impulse, she changed into a simple sundress and drove to the small park near Marcus's church. Their Sunday afternoon barbecues were a neighborhood tradition. She had no plan, no speech prepared, just a small dish of homemade cookies and a need to see him, even if he turned her away. As she walked toward the gathering, conversations quieted. Faces turned her way, some curious, some wary. Charlotte spotted Ray first, manning the grill. He caught her eye and gave a small nod. Then she saw Marcus, standing with a group of friends. He looked up and saw her, his expression unreadable. Charlotte froze, suddenly uncertain. Coming here had been a mistake. She was about to turn and leave when Marcus excused himself and walked toward her. "Hi," she said softly when he reached her. "Hi." His voice was neutral. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I can go," she offered. I wanted to see you." Marcus looked at the dish in her hands. "What's that?" "Cookies, my grandmother's recipe." Charlotte swallowed hard. "Probably not very good. I'm not much of a baker." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Brave of you to bring them here. Mrs. Wilson over there makes the best cookies in the county." "I'm trying to be braver," Charlotte said simply. Marcus nodded toward a shaded area away from the crowd. "Walk with me?" They moved to a quieter spot under a large oak tree, the sounds of the barbecue creating a gentle backdrop. "I got your letter," Marcus said once they were alone. "I meant every word." "I know." He looked at her directly. "That's why I'm talking to you right now." Charlotte took a deep breath. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. What I said was awful. There's no excuse for it." "No, there isn't." His voice was firm, but not cruel. But I need to know why. Was it just a careless comment? Or is that really how you feel? It was something ugly inside me that I never wanted to look at, Charlotte admitted. Growing up, my mother always had these expectations about who I should be with. I never questioned them until she met his eyes. Until I met you. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When I heard that recording, I thought everything between us had been fake. That I was just some project for you, some way to prove you weren't prejudiced. You were never a project, Charlotte said, her voice breaking. You were the person who made me want to be better than I was. They stood in silence, the weight of her words settling between them. I don't know if I can forgive you, Marcus finally said, his voice low. Charlotte nodded, tears filling her eyes. I understand. But, he continued, I don't know if I can just walk away either. Hope flickered in her chest, fragile but real. What does that mean? It means I need time, Marcus said honestly. But I'm willing to talk, to see if there's anything here worth saving. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation. But it was a door left open, just a crack, and that was more than Charlotte had dared to hope for. I'd like that, she said softly, however long it takes. As they walked back to the barbecue, careful distance between them, Charlotte knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, didn't mend overnight. But for the first time since the recording had surfaced, she felt something close to peace. Not because Marcus might forgive her someday, but because she had finally faced the truth in herself and with him. And truth, painful as it was, felt like the first real step toward healing. 3 weeks passed. Charlotte threw herself into work, leading meetings and reviewing reports, but her heart wasn't in it. She felt like a ghost in her own life, going through motions that once seemed important, but now felt hollow. At Reed Auto and Tow, Marcus worked longer hours than necessary, keeping his hands and mind busy with engines and transmissions. Customers noticed his subdued mood, but knew better than to ask. Only Ray understood, watching his son with quiet concern. One evening, Ray found Marcus under a lifted truck long after closing time. Shop's closed, son, he said, leaning against a workbench. Just finishing this alignment, Marcus replied, his voice echoing from beneath the vehicle. Been just finishing a lot of things lately. Ray crossed his arms. When's the last time you took a day off? Marcus slid out from under the truck, wiping grease from his hands. Been busy. Been avoiding, Ray corrected. That letter's wearing a hole in your pocket. Marcus had carried Charlotte's letter with him every day since receiving it, reading it over when he thought no one was watching. He didn't reply to this observation. She called the shop today, Ray said casually, asked how you were doing. Marcus stiffened. What did you tell her? The truth, that you're working too hard and thinking too much. Ray handed his son a clean rag. You need to make a decision, Marcus. Either forgive her or don't, but stop torturing yourself in between. It's not that simple, Marcus said, tossing the rag onto the bench. Never said it was simple, Ray replied. But it is necessary. For your own peace, if nothing else. He headed toward the door, then turned back. And son, don't let pain make you cruel. Not to her, and not to yourself. After his father left, Marcus sat alone in the quiet garage. Maggie patted over and rested her head on his knee, looking up with concerned brown eyes. What do you think, girl? He asked, scratching behind her ears. Am I being stubborn or careful? Maggie whined softly, as if to say, "You know the answer to that." Marcus pulled Charlotte's letter from his pocket, the paper now soft from handling. As he read her words again, he felt the anger that had fueled him these past weeks beginning to fade, leaving room for a more complicated truth. He missed her. Despite everything, he missed her laugh, her curiosity, the way her eyes lit up when she learned something new. "I don't know what to do," he whispered to the empty garage. But deep down, he was beginning to think maybe he did. Charlotte sat in her kitchen, staring at the blank page before her. She'd started and discarded a dozen drafts of her resignation letter. The company had been her mother's dream first, then hers. Walking away wouldn't be easy. But staying meant accepting Nate's financing deal, with all the strings attached. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. "Boardroom, 30 minutes. Nate's gathering everyone for the vote." Charlotte sighed. She hadn't made a decision yet, but time was running out. The doorbell rang. Charlotte wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. She opened the door to find her mother standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Donna straightened her shoulders. "May I come in?" In the kitchen, Donna declined Charlotte's offer of coffee, instead moving straight to the point. "You're considering resigning," she said, not a question. Charlotte nodded. "How did you know?" "Because I know you." Donna's voice softened slightly. "And because it's what I would do, faced with Nate's ultimatum." "You know about that too?" "I'm still chair of the board, Charlotte. Very little happens without my knowledge." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. "Though I admit I've been distracted lately. Concerned about appearances rather than substance." Charlotte stared at her mother, surprised by this admission. "I spoke with Lydia," Donna continued. "She helped me understand what's been happening with the company, with Nate, and with your mechanic." "Marcus," Charlotte corrected gently. "His name is Marcus." Donna nodded. "Yes, Marcus. She also explained about the recording." Charlotte tensed. "And I realized something," Donna said slowly. "Those words you said, they could have come from my mouth 20 years ago. In fact, they probably did." She looked directly at her daughter. "Which means I taught you to think that way." Charlotte had never seen her mother look vulnerable before. It was disconcerting. "Mom, I made my own choices, said my own words." "Yes, you did," Donna agreed. "But children learn from their parents, whether we intend it or not." She reached across the table and took Charlotte's hand, another rare gesture. "I'm sorry, Charlotte, for the limits I put on your life without even realizing it." Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. "I've made such a mess of things." "Perhaps," Donna said, "but it's not too late to fix it. Starting with Nate Collins and his power play." "The board is meeting in 20 minutes, Charlotte said. "They'll vote on his proposal." Donna's expression hardened into the businesswoman Charlotte knew so well. "Then we'd better not be late, should we?" The boardroom hummed with tension when Charlotte and Donna arrived. Nate stood at the head of the table, his presentation already displayed on the large screen. He faltered momentarily when he saw them enter together. "Charlotte, Donna." He recovered smoothly. "Glad you could make it. We were just discussing the tremendous growth opportunity my proposal represents." "Were you?" Charlotte took her seat, motioning for her mother to join her. "And did you mention the part where you joined the executive team as a condition of this financing?" Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Clearly, Nate had downplayed that aspect. "It's a standard arrangement," Nate said dismissively. "Investors want representation from someone they trust." Someone like you? Charlotte asked, her voice calm. Precisely. Nate smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Someone who understands the importance of company image. The threat was thinly veiled. Charlotte knew he was referring to the recording, implying he could make it public if she didn't cooperate. Before we vote, Charlotte said, addressing the board, I'd like to share something. She took a deep breath, feeling her mother's supportive presence beside her. 3 months ago, I made a prejudiced remark that I deeply regret. I said that I could never love a black man. She ignored the murmurs around the table. Minutes later, I was in a car accident, and a black man, Marcus Reed, pulled me from the wreck, possibly saving my life. The room was silent now, all eyes on her. Since then, I've been confronting the prejudice I didn't want to admit I had. It's been painful and humbling. She looked directly at Nate. Recently, someone recorded that remark and used it to try to manipulate me, to control me and this company. Nate's face flushed. That's a serious accusation, Charlotte. It is, she agreed. And I can prove it. But I'm not here to expose or embarrass anyone. She turned back to the board. I'm here to own my mistake and do better, and to lead this company with integrity, not fear. She laid out an alternative growth plan, one that maintained control while expanding at a more sustainable pace. When she finished, Donna stood. As chair, I move that we vote on my daughter's proposal first, she said firmly, and I cast my vote in favor. One by one, the board members voted. When the final tally was counted, Charlotte's plan had passed overwhelmingly. Nate gathered his papers, his jaw tight. You'll regret this, Charlotte. No, I don't think I will, she replied calmly. As Nate left, Lydia slipped into the room, giving Charlotte a discreet thumbs up. The worst was over. Now came the harder part, repairing what mattered most. Sunday afternoon, Charlotte sat on a bench in the small park where she'd last spoken with Marcus. The early autumn air was crisp, leaves beginning to turn golden overhead. She'd come here often these past weeks, finding peace in the quiet space. She opened her notebook, filling pages with thoughts and plans for the company's future. Without Nate's pressure, she'd been able to focus on what really mattered, creating products that helped people, providing good jobs, building something that would last. Is this seat taken? Charlotte looked up to find Marcus standing there, hands in the pockets of his jacket. Her heart leapt, but she kept her voice steady. It's all yours. He sat beside her, leaving space between them. For a while, neither spoke, just watched children playing on the swings nearby. How have you been? He finally asked. Okay, she said honestly. Working on things. You? Same. He nodded toward her notebook. New product ideas? Community initiatives, actually. Programs to support small businesses in underserved neighborhoods. She closed the notebook. Your dad helped me connect with some local entrepreneurs? Marcus raised an eyebrow. My dad? Charlotte smiled slightly. He's been patient with me, answering my questions, helping me understand. That sounds like him, Marcus said, a hint of fondness in his voice. Another silence fell between them, more comfortable than the last. I've been thinking about your letter, Marcus finally said. Reading it, actually, pretty much every day. Charlotte's breath caught. You have? He nodded. At first, I read it to remind myself why I was angry. Then, after a while, I read it to remember your voice. He turned to face her. I've missed you, Charlotte, even when I didn't want to. I've missed you too, she whispered. So much. Marcus took a deep breath. I'm not saying I'm over it. What you said, what you hid, it hurt. But I've been doing my own thinking these past weeks, about forgiveness, about second chances. He looked at his hands. About love. Hope bloomed in Charlotte's chest, but she held it carefully. What are you saying? I'm saying I still love you, he said simply. And I want something better than anger between us. Tears filled Charlotte's eyes. I want that too. It won't be easy, Marcus warned. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know. Charlotte nodded. I'm ready to do that work, for as long as it takes. No more hiding, no more fear. Marcus reached over and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. Then let's try. Slowly, in truth this time. As they sat together on the bench, hands linked, Charlotte felt something settle in her heart. Not the relief of being forgiven, but the deeper peace of being truly seen, flaws and all, and still worthy of love. 3 weeks later, Charlotte stood in the atrium of her company headquarters, nervous energy buzzing through her. The quarterly employee gathering was starting, and for the first time, Marcus would be attending not as a contractor, but as her partner. Employees filtered in, grabbing refreshments and chatting in small groups. Charlotte spotted Lydia, directing the catering staff, efficient as always. Ready for this? Lydia asked, joining her by the podium. As I'll ever be, Charlotte replied. The crowd quieted as she stepped up to the microphone. She kept her remarks brief, updating the team on recent developments and introducing the community initiatives she'd been developing. As she spoke, she caught sight of Marcus entering at the back of the room. He gave her an encouraging nod. When the formal portion ended, Charlotte made her way through the crowd to meet him. Several people glanced curiously between them, whispers following in their wake. But this time, Charlotte didn't hide. She reached for his hand openly, linking their fingers together. Ms. Hale? A senior manager approached. The new fleet maintenance contract looks excellent. Cost savings and better service. Thank you, Charlotte said. But the credit goes to Reed Auto and Tow. This is the owner, Marcus Reed. She squeezed his hand. My partner. The word felt right, honest and proud. Across the room, Donna watched them. When Charlotte caught her eye, her mother raised her glass slightly in acknowledgement. It wasn't enthusiasm, not yet, but it was acceptance. A start. Later, as the gathering wound down, Charlotte noticed Nate Collins hovering near the entrance, watching her. Their eyes met briefly. He gave a tight smile and then left without approaching. His power play had failed, and they both knew it. Everything okay? Marcus asked, following her gaze. Better than okay, Charlotte said, turning back to him. Just tying up loose ends. The weeks that followed had their challenges. There were uncomfortable conversations, moments of doubt on both sides. But there were beautiful moments too. Sunday dinners with Ray, who welcomed Charlotte with growing warmth. Quiet evenings at Marcus's house, where Charlotte learned to cook simple meals alongside him. Mornings at the garage, where she now sometimes worked on her laptop while he serviced cars, their companionable silence a comfort to both. Slowly, trust rebuilt itself between them, stronger than before, because it was founded on truth rather than wishful thinking. One evening, they attended a friend's wedding together. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception lively. As they walked to the car afterward, Charlotte stumbled on the uneven pavement of the parking lot, her heel catching in a crack. Marcus caught her before she could fall, lifting her easily into his arms, just as he had on that rainy night months ago. This time, instead of smoke and fear, there was laughter and the sweet scent of flowers. My hero again, Charlotte said, smiling up at him. Marcus grinned. Carrying beautiful women out of trouble is apparently my specialty. As he set her down gently, Charlotte kept her arms around his neck. In the soft glow of the parking lot lights, She looked into his eyes and saw a future there, complicated sometimes, but real and good. I once said I could never love a black man, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank God I was wrong. Marcus's expression softened. He touched her cheek gently, then leaned down to kiss her forehead. Thank God we both were, he murmured against her skin. Hand in hand, they walked to the car and drove home together, not to her place or his, but to the future they were building, step by careful step, in the space between their two worlds that was slowly becoming one. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be challenges ahead, prejudiced glances in restaurants, uncomfortable questions from business associates, the occasional tone-deaf comment from Donna. But they faced those moments together now, with honesty and courage, and the certainty that what they had built was worth fighting for. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.